Hey you guys, what's going on? My name is Ryrie the Writer. So let's jump into this topic today. And yes, I'm still doing the cowboy hat thing. I'm just feeling it right now. And maybe this is just preparation for Halloween. I won't tell you guys what I'm going to dress up as, but I'm going to tell you guys this. For the month of October, which I'm like, come on, October. Come on, hurry up. Come on, October. For the month of October, I will definitely be wearing a costume while I'm filming. So it's gonna be so freaking fun. I'm debating if I want to do two different costumes and just like film the whole month and just be in those costumes. But yes, I will be in a costume for the month of October. And yeah, I'm a nerd, so maybe that's a hint. Maybe that's a little bit of a hint. Okay, but yeah, in terms of what we're talking about today, as you guys have already read the title to this video, California in the city. Yeah, California, big dog California. What has California been up to in the past, I don't know, week and a half, 2 weeks? I did another video on California trying to push a bill for non-US citizens, illegal immigrants, for this bill for these immigrants to receive funding for their first home. Yes, that's California for you. Very outlandish, little wacky, little crazy, but that's California. Why it's going into direction, hey, we voted for it, not me, but someone voted for these people, and that's where we're at currently. But yeah, in terms of California over the past weekend, they were attempting to do something about reparations. And if for those of you who do not know what reparations are, slavery ended in December 6, 1865. That's when it was abolished, and it's titled underneath the 13th Amendment. And after slavery was promised, and this is around Abraham Lincoln's time, it was promised that slaves, the descendants of slaves, we would be receiving 40 acres and a mule. And as we know, that did not fall through. Of course it didn't, but it did not fall through. So those who were slaves, descendants of slaves, never received anything post-slavery. So nothing was given to African Americans, descendants of slaves. For the longest of time, the discussion of reparations has always been on the table. It's something that has been a black smudge, I believe, a black smudge on America. I believe that millions of African Americans, descendants of slaves, have always felt some type of way because of it, because of this wrong, unjust that was done, which is slavery, which was done to the slaves and descendants of slaves. And for a lot of people, they might ask, why should we care about reparations? Why is it important? It happened back in 1865. It was only for a couple hundred years. We've moved on. It's 2024. Those who are descendants of slaves no longer needed. They should just, find their wealth, and it doesn't matter anymore. But I'm here to paint a picture to you, because I was that individual a couple years ago. Thankfully, I was educated on how slavery, not just slavery, affected and impacted African Americans and their descendants, but how generations after slavery were also impacted because of the color of their skin. And thanks to Google, because you can just type this stuff on Google, I was able to get a little bit of an answer on that. And here we go. Slavery in the United States was abolished by the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which was ratified on December 6, 1865. And as we know, that's not exactly when it all ended for all African Americans. The truth is, it actually ended in June, 2 years after that date. Thank you, Texas. Come on, Texas. But yeah, that's when slavery ended for all slaves, African American slaves. The amendment states that slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited in the United States except as punishment for a crime. However, the end of slavery was not the end of the struggles for Black Americans. Southern states continue to treat Black Americans as second-class citizens by passing Black codes and Jim Crow laws. One of these codes that I'm most familiar with is actually, it's called redlining. So have you ever wondered why Black people seem to be in certain areas in certain states, and why you don't see too many African Americans in other parts of the states? Say, like, for instance, I live in California. Where I discovered redlining was the most prominent was in, you guessed it, Compton, Inglewood, up in the hood. These areas that we reference as the hoods were areas that were redlined, where African Americans were designated to. But areas, say, if you want to go there, Malibu, the Hills, Beverly, those areas were designated towards white individuals. And it's prominently known that that was a coding that was done. And it's still happening a little bit. Still out there. Be very surprised. Especially when you get to African Americans trying to buy homes, and you start getting into getting loans for homes, and where African Americans are allowed. Some of these things and some of these barriers still exist. And these stories, you can look them up on Google, because Google is free. I'm not going to sit here and break all those things down to you. But yeah, these laws restricted the rights of Black Americans and bypassed constitutional requirements. So because of Black codes and because of Jim Crow laws, and I'm also going to throw in segregation, then you also have the KKK and white supremacy and racism. Because of all those factors, even after slavery, African Americans have been pushed underneath the thumb. They've not been allowed to move into certain areas, start certain companies, or even when they do begin to progress and start their own company towns and so on and so forth. Because of racism and because of what past and maybe current white individuals thought in this country, they destroyed and burned and killed those individuals who were trying to be progressive for their people. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of people might just say slavery was a thing of the past. It happened. It was horrible. We all can agree that it was not right. It was unjust. It was some of the worst atrocities ever seen and done in human history and documented. We can all agree upon that, but where a lot of people draw the line is whether African Americans deserve reparations. And because of what I just said, Black codes and Jim Crow laws and segregation and things that followed after that, African Americans were still weren't able to live to the fullest of what it meant to be an American in this country. And it goes right here. Juneteenth is the day that honors the end of slavery in the United States, as it marks the day in 1865 when the last enslaved community in Galveston, Texas, learned they had been freed. So yeah, that was in Texas. But yeah, back to California, where this ties into California. So in California, they have a task force. It's called it's the Black Caucus. And their leaders in the Black Caucus were attempting to start reparations in California, which I think is a great first step. I think this is something that should have been done decades, hundreds of years ago, but hey, better late than never when it comes in terms of reparations for African Americans. Because when I think about reparations, I not only just in comparison, say, to other races or ethnicities in this country, but you compare it to, not saying, but I'm just saying, Native Americans. You even think about what's happened recently in the past, like 5 years. We've done so many things for immigrants in this country. Look at New York, look at California, look at Colorado, look at Ohio. The millions of dollars that we dispersed into people who aren't even Americans. That says a lot. Then you also look at the Asian Act that was passed during the pandemic for protection for Asian Americans in this country as well. So I find it so interesting that here in this country, we can pedestal so many different races, but those who were the founding members of the society who built it, and I will say that built this country, which were African Americans. You think about cotton, think about meat production, you think about just free labor, sugar, all coffee beans, livestock, what African Americans did in terms of building this country. Like, if you ever go on a tour and you want to know about what African Americans actually built, go down to Washington, D.C. If you get a really good tour guide, they'll tell you what slaves built. One being is like the Capitol, which blew my mind when I was down there. I was like, wow, that's absolutely amazing. And slaves even participated in putting together the Statue of Liberty. It's really insane. But it was a whole bunch of just free labor. But like I said, it's very interesting how this country views the descendants of slaves. But yeah, back to this. So yeah, they were attempting to bring in reparations. And the task force, they actually blocked their own proposal. They blocked their own bill. So I'm going to do two things in this video. I'm going to read this article. I'm going to shout out KCRA Channel 3 News for writing this article by Ashley Zavala. Cool name. Then I'm also going to show you guys a video at the end of this. And there's a creator. I'm going to list it down in the description box. He did a fabulous job of just detailing what happened and what led to this bill being blocked by its own participants, which I think is absolutely insane. The reason for me, I'm thinking the reason why you want to start a Black Caucus is to benefit the Black citizens who live in that state, and to have blocked a bill that potentially could have changed the lives of, I don't know, I mean, African Americans that live in this state. Maybe 1 million. I think maybe 1 million of us live here. But to block a bill that would have benefited 1 million plus African Americans that live in the state is insane to me. Because just imagine, I'm not saying exactly what reparations should look like, but in my mind, like, just imagine if reparations look like African Americans in California not paying taxes. Imagine how that stipulation would change just the formatting of African Americans buying homes in the state. Just not paying taxes. How many doors that would just open just with that one little thing, not being allowed to pay taxes. Or let's say this, African Americans, similar to what Native Americans received, if they received a free education in the state, no matter how many degrees you wanted to, African Americans would receive that. Imagine what that would change. How many more African Americans would enlist in college without worrying about the financial responsibility and debt leverage that would be hanging over their head. So you would have so many more African Americans, hopefully maybe going into being dentistry, doctors, nurses, lawyers. You would have such an educated populace of African Americans in this state. And who knows how many lives that would just impact already. Because Lord knows we need more doctors, more nurses, say more teachers. There's a demand there. Imagine we had more lawyers. If they were African Americans, how that would even change the legal system here. I could see so many more benefits just by educating one group of people. Everything would change. But In my mind, I believe that, and this is just me thinking just off the rip, I just believe that, and here in America, they're just not ready for that. And they're not wanting or willing to give African Americans that type of step up in life. Can they? Absolutely. Do we have the money for it? Absolutely. Because you think about where money goes in this state already. I mean, look at all the millions of dollars that we waste in this country just on the military alone. And I will say that word. We do waste money in the military. Not all. But do I honestly think that the money goes exactly where it needs to go in the military? Like, think about it like this. I read an article, it was a while ago, it was a couple years ago, but yet the military wasted millions of dollars. I believe it was dressing, I believe it was the army, dressing the army in jungle attire, camo wear. And yet those participants who were in the military were doing their service in the desert. I believe it was like a waste of 24 million. But then again, you know, you think about all the illegal immigrants who've had access into this country as well. Look at all the millions and billions of dollars we've invested there. Or think about all the money we've also put into helping Zelensky. These people aren't even American citizens, and we're helping different countries. How easily would it have been to just give reparations to African Americans here? Like I said, either if it was tax-based or if it had to do with education. Those two things could have been done very easily, but America does not value African Americans that way. But also African Americans, we don't know how to come together and we don't unify. And I will say this, for Asian Americans, there's an issue. Boom, they get a bill done. They get it pushed. It's a priority. Jews in this country, immediately, they get reparations. And I believe it was in New York. They got reparations there for the Holocaust. And America had nothing to do with that. We helped with the Holocaust. But they got reparations for that. They got a funding. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But yeah, African Americans, we have to come together. But I also do know this. I was doing some research as well. I found out that those members in the Black Caucus, a lot of them weren't even African Americans or descendants of slaves. A lot of them were actually immigrants themselves. So maybe that says a lot as well. There's so much to dive into with this. But yeah, let me read this article to you guys. 3 days after the California legislation, Black Caucus blocked the California Assembly from voting on two reparation proposals. And if you're wondering what those proposals are, I'll give them to you right here. It's also in the article, but I'll just say them right now. The two bills are SB 1403 and SB 1331. So the first one, 1403, would establish a reparations-related state agency that would oversee the state's efforts on the issue while also determining who's eligible for the benefits. So basically, the SB 14 would just oversee reparations, like the funding for it, and it would be deciding who's actually eligible for the benefits, which I don't believe would be too hard. I think thanks to corporations, agencies like Ancestry.com, where you can just give a simple DNA test, you can actually find, depending on which DNA test you're taking, but you can actually find your people. And you can locate what plantation your forefathers came from. Because I know for me, my brother actually did Ancestry. We already knew where we came from, but my brother did it, and we found out where we're related to, which was out in Tennessee. We found, I can't remember what plantation it was, but it was out there towards Tennessee. Then we also found some of our cousins out in Texas as well. But same thing, we did our own research as well. We found out some other similar plantations there. Then on my mother's side, she's West Indian. And we already know the plantation there on St. Thomas, out in Barbados, you know, with just the research. But that's what I'm saying. I don't think it would be that hard to find if someone's eligible for being a descendant of slavery. I think that would actually be pretty easy. But determining with mixing, it's been a couple of generations. They would have to determine, I guess, like the quality or the blood. You know what I mean? Like the blood equivalency, like who has enough, I suppose. Similar to what they do with Native Americans, like the blood percentage of how much Cherokee or how much Sioux you have to determine if you're eligible for it. So with SB 1331, it would create a new state fund for the reparations. And this is where the big problem comes in. This would require that California make the funding to pull into the Reparations Act. Reparations Bill, I mean. And you know how California is. It's money. That's the biggest problem. Does California have the money or the funding for this? And I don't think it should just be solely held on California's back to pull into reparations. It should be the whole entire country. It should be everybody. Everyone should be pulling it, because slavery, it didn't just benefit California. It benefited Texas. It sure did benefit Virginia. Come on now. Tennessee, Georgia, if we're really getting down to it, Maine, those states tremendously benefited from slavery, especially if their lineage. You start looking at their kids, their kids. I'm not really trying to pick on white Americans, but yeah, a lot of those down south white individuals definitely benefited from slavery. And they were able to build generational wealth because of that, and start businesses. But yeah, so that's what it was. Let me see. Let me keep reading. Because I could talk about this all day. The leader of the State Reparations Task Force is speaking out against the group's actions. I think what happened on Saturday was unconsequential, says Camilla Moore, the chair of California's Reparations Task Force, which spent 2 years studying the impacts of slavery and racial discrimination on African Americans in California. And I would bid in, how much more studies do we need to do to understand how slavery has impacted African Americans? Like, how many studies and tables and surveys and debunkings do we actually need to do to understand how racial discrimination impacted African Americans, especially in California? I mean, my God, isn't it pretty obvious? Like I said, just even with redlining alone, just think about like that. With redlining alone, how many African Americans were not allowed to build generational wealth with not being allowed to live in a certain community where their home value would have generated who knows how many more millions of dollars? Just think about like that alone. Granted, now in 2024, homes in Inglewood and Compton, the value has increased. But imagine back in the day. Imagine how many African Americans were able to buy homes, could afford to buy homes in Beverly Hills or these well-to-do areas that were denied because of their skin color. And because they were denied access to living in that community, those homes now are worth 3, 4, 5, 6 times more than they are in the homes that are in Inglewood and Compton and in some of these lower class areas. Just think about that alone. Or just think about how many loans were denied to African Americans to start businesses, or how many African Americans were trying to get into certain schools were denied because of their skin color. Just think about like that alone. Just the death and thought, thinking about how that just impacted African Americans and how that set so many African Americans from not even being in the talk for wealth in this country. I believe our wealth here in this country is like what, 1%? We're like 1%. How many African American billionaires can you just name? How many? Like, tell me that. Just tell me that alone. Not a lot. Just think about these things. Okay. KCRA Channel 3 reached out to the California Secretary of the State, Shirley Weber, who wrote that the state law that created the task force, she declined to do an interview on the situation on Tuesday. Yeah, I bet. Because how embarrassing. The Black Caucus announced on the final night of the legislative session on Saturday that it would not bring the two reparation proposals up for final votes in the Assembly, including SB 1403 to establish a reparations state agency and SB 1331 to establish a reparations fund. So that's the Black Caucus. They announced that they would not bring the two reparation proposals on the Assembly for it to be invoked. So they pretty much said, you know what? These two things matter to African Americans in this state and all across this country. We could do this, but we're not going to do this. We started this Black Caucus to put forth African Americans first, for the first time, to start giving them access to things that they've never had. And we have an opportunity to fight for more, but you know what? We're not going to do this. That's what I said, reparations has been in talks for years, longer than I've been alive, you've been alive, your mother's been alive, your grandmother's been alive. It's always been a hot topic, and no one ever follows through with it. And for the first time in ever, it could have been presented. And imagine this. Imagine if it was these two bills were put on Gavin Newsom's desk. Imagine how bad he would look denying this. Just denying this. Because I know Gavin Newsom is trying to run for presidency. I'm pretty sure in the next 4 years after this term, whoever wins, Camilla or Trump. But just imagine him denying this or vetoing this bill. How that would look to African Americans voting for him in the next 4 years. I'm pretty sure, and I'm just speculating, I'm pretty sure they were like, no, do not put this on Gavin Newsom's desk. Because if he said no, the Democratic African Americans would just go abysmal. They would be gone. He would lose every single Black Democratic voter, especially here in this state, would be gone. All those Black women who are like pro-Democrats will be going, what? What happened in California? What? Huh? Wait, the African Americans in California could have got reparations, but Gavin Newsom vetoed that? Done. Burned. Gone. And that's what I said. I can just see it right now. Them just going, no. Let's have the Black Caucus burn this opportunity and get rid of it. And let's just say, no, the bill has problems and we couldn't figure it out, and we will try to put it on the table in the future. Probably won't ever, but no, not no. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they're going, no, he shouldn't become president, no. The tension among members of the caucus flared into late Saturday night, with the caucus divided over the last-minute decision. Democratic State Senator Stephen Bradford, who wrote the bills, claimed the caucus was scared of Gavin Newsom's veto after Bradford refused to accept changes to SB 1403 proposed by the governor's office. Caucus leader, Democratic Assembly member Lori Wilson denied this and claimed the bills didn't have the votes. And I'm pretty sure they could have had the votes. But tell me this, why didn't they have the votes? Who on the Black Caucus, I'm pretty sure I can just look this up, but who on the Black Caucus didn't want this? Why didn't they have the votes? Because it wasn't any outside forces. It was within the House. It was the Black Caucus. So that's what I'm saying. That's the question. Who in the Black Caucus doesn't want reparations? You know, sure, they could be afraid of a veto, but like I said, how bad would Gavin Newsom have looked vetoing a reparations bill? And how would that have impacted his presidency? No one likes to think like that outside the box, but I do. Because I'm smart. I like to think things through. Sure, it probably would have been an issue with funding. But like I said, how much funding does the state spend on everything else? How much are we spending on illegal immigrants in this state already? How much money are we spending on illegal immigration in this country already? How much money did we give to those who aren't even American citizens to help out their country? Right? To help fight against Russia. Think about Ukraine. Think about that. I want you guys to really think about that. How many billions of dollars have we spent over there? And with all that money we could have spent, we could have dramatically changed the ecosystem here in the United States. It's insane to me. That's what I'm saying. It's no more the times of excuses and we don't have the money completely went out the door once we hit 2020. Once we hit 2020 and we saw how much money was going out the door, granted, yes, inflation, that was already a big point, but look at what inflation is now because it didn't go to American citizens. I just want you all to think about that. Just purely think about where money went to Ukraine. Just to Ukraine alone. Just think about, forget about everything else we've put into different bills, or even with the COVID relief package, how that was just, inflated with all types of just strange things that had nothing to do with Americans suffering from the pandemic. But just think about that alone. How much money we gave to Ukraine, but we have no money to give African Americans reparations in California. That's what I'm saying. Before you even debate me in the comment section, just think about that alone. And even if you don't want to think about that, and you're thinking, yes, Ukraine, we need to protect them, and Russia, sure. Think about how many illegal immigrants in this country we've given free healthcare to in California. And you live here and you pay taxes. Just think about that alone. What? I got my cowboy hat on today. Come on now. I'm cooking. The Republican Assembly bill, I probably won't say his name right, SLE, I don't know, attempted to force a vote on one of the measures. This sent Democrats scrambling to figure out how to prevent a floor vote. Okay, so Bill was like, yo, hey, you know what? No, we doing this. He was like, no, we putting this on the floor. The Democrats were going, no, get this off. No, we're preventing this. No. The Assembly then placed the bills on an inactive file, effectively killing the proposals. What's going on with the Democrats, the black Democrats out here in California? What's going on? And they did this without Bradford's permission. So they went around him and said, you know what? We're going to put this as an inactive file. No, we can't do this. It goes, what we saw was a complete betrayal by the California Legislative Black Caucus against their own conscience. Moore told Channel 3 in an interview on Tuesday. They chose to prioritize their own ego and their own self-interest over the people they claim to serve. Makes me wonder, though, that because of these members who were part of the Black Caucus, who were part of killing this proposal, killing this bill, and not allowing it to be on the floor, who's in their pockets? Who's controlling these people? Because my mindset is always going to be about, when it comes down to those who run for office and those who have placed Senate, or you know what I mean. Anyone who's in a government position. I already know someone got paid. Somebody got some money somewhere. Somebody was lobbied. Someone was slipped a check. Somebody was given a car. Somebody was given a vacation. Someone was sent out to Paris. Somebody got money. So that's how I'm wondering, just looking at this, who was part of the Black Caucus who got paid out and was told, no, do not put this thing on the floor? I'm pretty sure if someone out there wanted to do research and were able to tie strings back to which company or to who, they could find it. She noted the bill to establish the state agency, which would be known as the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, was meant to be the foundation of the state's reparation efforts moving forward. She noted in other reparations efforts across the country and internationally, infrastructure was first put in place to set up to provide the restitution, materials, benefits, policies, and programs. Lawmakers did send Gavin Newsom the SB 1050 Reparations Task Force recommendation that would provide a process for those who had their land unfairly taken through eminent domain, which I think is great. That should be done. I think that's great. That land restitution is supposed to go through that agency that the CLBC members just killed. Oh, Lord. So for African Americans who had lost their land due to racism and the powers that be that they had no control over, land restitution, that has been killed. So not only do African Americans not going to receive reparations or just the spark and the inclination of a possibility for that, but also for land restitution for those African Americans who lost their land. And here's a little side note. I was actually on TikTok when I actually saw this video. I found out that the Dodger Stadium, there was actually a housing situation there. Housing, what would you call, like a cul-de-sac of, I don't know, like housing units of African Americans who actually lived there. And they were booted out for the Dodger Stadium. Do your research. But yeah, that was actually a cul-de-sac where African Americans lived, and boom, it was cleared out for the Dodger Stadium. But there's so many. There's a show that I like, and it was starring Childish Gambino. It's called Atlanta. There's an episode where you have these, I think it was two black guys on a boat, and they were talking about how black towns were flooded by the government or swept out or burned or just killed or whatever. And those lakes that people love so much were actually black towns. So underneath those lakes are actually towns. Black towns and communities that were destroyed. But, it doesn't surprise me, too, because I had to think about Tulsa. I didn't even know that happened to Tulsa until, last year, that Tulsa had its own black entrepreneurs, black millionaires, just black community completely burned. Completely just burned to the ground, ripped from society, and that these things have happened. But that's what I'm saying. These are things that I didn't even learn in school and college, or just going through the education system out here in America. I learned these things on my own, or just thankfully through TikTok. But yeah, just think about it like that. African Americans receiving their lands that were stripped from them, ripped from them, because of racism and Jim Crow and who knows what else. But now that's just been killed. Moore was at the Capitol with several other advocates for reparations who protested the decision by the caucus. I was really trying to use logic and reason to get through these Black Caucus members to do the right thing, Moore said. They were just completely disrespectful to their constituents. Moore mentioned a video that went viral showing Assembly members Reggie Jones Sawyer taunting the demonstrators who waited outside the Assembly chamber. She said Assembly members Chris Holden, Mike Gibson, Akilah Weber walked away from those who were there, urging them to bring the bills up for the votes. Akilah is the Secretary of the State, Shirley Weber's daughter. Wow, family. Nepotism. Wilson was expected to headline a reparations-related rally at the state capitol on Tuesday, but canceled. Probably because it's not safe. And it's insane to think also that I found out about this through TikTok. And I found out about this a little late, a little bit behind the times, right? Imagine if more African Americans who live in the state of California knew that this was going on. I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of this. But imagine if more African Americans in the state knew that this was happening, that this was a possibility. These people are in danger. There's no way. Like I said, can you imagine how pissed off African Americans, descendants of slaves, would feel knowing that they couldn't get reparations, but their own men, the Black Caucus, is the reason why it wasn't even put on the assembly floor. Because they blocked it. And they effectively got rid of it. Insane. Insane. Demonstrator supporters and advocates emailed the speaker's office, tagged his social media, and asked him to override the Black Caucus dysfunctionality and to do right by the people of California, Moore said. In effect, he sided with the Black Caucus. Dang. 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 Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We knew this was a tough year for our budget, Rivera said. And this is where I got to come in because this is a long article. We knew this was a tough year for our budget, Rivera said. Everything we did was underpinned by our budget. A lot of good bills did not make it through. And this is where I got to bring it up. It was not put on the assembly floor, and it was not going to be a thing because of money. That was money. California, we're in a deficit. In California, we can't even determine how much money we're in the red, and it's growing. We don't even know where money's even going at this point. But we're in the red right now. We're in a deficit in the billions. And it looks bad already. So Gavin Newsom's probably going, you know what? We have so much money in influx, and we're being drained in so many different directions that us even proposing a reparation bill don't even put this on my table. So he's probably looking at the Black Caucus members, don't even make me look bad. If you put this on my table and I gotta veto this and you're gonna ruin my presidency, let me get on you with my slick hair. No, don't you even do this. Don't you even dare make me look bad in front of black Democrats. I need the votes. I'm about to run a couple years. Don't you dare, California, make me look bad. That's what I'm saying. So when I hear this, Rivera said everything we did was underpinned by our budget. That's them falling and going, nope, we can't do this. So yes, it was not going to go through. And possibly if it even went on Gavin Newsom's desk and he had to look bad by vetoing it, no, he could not have that. Because yeah, these things matter, especially when you're running for presidency. You're trying to go into your next term, or I know he's 2 terms in, but you're trying to go into your next venture. No, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, no. But yeah, let me show you guys this video. It's a little bit long. It is a little long. This is a long video, but that's what I'm saying. I know y'all can handle it. Y'all just not out here just to be out here. Y'all can handle this video. So I'm gonna show you guys this video. I'm gonna put it on the screen. You guys can watch the very end of it and just see what people are talking about. See what African Americans are talking about in terms of how they feel about this bill and what could have been and should have been. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate you guys so much. Tell me your thoughts down below. I appreciate you guys for sticking through, following me on this channel. And we are growing. And I appreciate you guys for allowing me to talk about news and my nerd stuff. Because I go back and forth with the news. And especially anything with California. I like to talk about money things regarding the state. And where we're losing money in. Where it's being spent. Because it impacts a lot of people. These things matter. And it should be on this discussion board for you guys to think about it. Develop your own opinions. And just to get the awareness of what's happening. But yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. I'm gonna drop the video right now. But yeah, make sure you like and subscribe and you follow if you want to get more news and topics from me that I find on TikTok. All right, here we go. I'm gonna throw it in.
We got some updates from California on our reparations front. Key components of legislation designed to provide reparations for descendants of enslaved Black Americans failed to pass in California. While the state legislature did pass other bills aimed at repairing some of the damage done by institutional racism, it stopped short of the actual purpose, which was to create a new Freedmen Affairs Agency. Now, this agency would have allowed the legislature to take action and identify those entitled to reparations and then actually distribute the payments. We talk about reparations. It's not an abstract thing. We're talking about payments. Now, what you saw there, I believe, was State Senator Stephen Bradford authored the measures, and he said the bills didn't move forward out of fear that Gavin Newsom would veto them. Bradford said that Newsom blamed budget shortfalls. He said they ain't got no money for the reason that he was unable to support the bills. Now, in California's legislative Black Caucus put out a statement saying that there are problems with the bill, mainly that it ceded legislative oversight authority and that it needed work. They said the bill would be taken up next session. Well, we'll have to see. Well, we ain't gonna wait the next section to get a response from the people, because the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, they were not happy about it. They made their unhappiness known. Again, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California issued a statement that I think is worth reading here. And I thought that it was a powerful statement and one that we should take very seriously. They said, "This statement is false. The truth is that the California Black Caucus, CLBC, lied and cheated to stop reparations bills from getting to the governor's desk. Again, Black legislators stopped reparations bills for Black Americans in California. We had the votes to pass the bills and they knew it. So they refused to bring the bills up for a vote. This type of betrayal cannot go unanswered. There must be a political price to pay. Gone are the days when politicians of any race or party can disrespect Black Americans and expect no political consequences. We are not captured. We do not belong to any party or special interest. We are the living embodiment of our ancestors who built this state and this country over 400 years and who are owed reparations. We're coming. No, we're here to get our checks and more." That is a powerful statement. And I got joining me right now, Camilla Moore Esquire. She is the chair, once again, of the California Reparations Task Force. She joins us on Night School. Camilla, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So for my audience that doesn't know what's going on, or we only see what's going on based on a few Twitter clips and TikTok, shots, what is happening in California?
Right. So in 2020, right after, you could say the racial reckoning of George Floyd, right? You had assembly members, senators ready to do what they can, even Gavin Newsom kind of ready to do what they can to rectify with, the history of discrimination against African Americans. Luckily enough, right, there were already organizers primed on the ground at that moment, particularly CJEC, which you just mentioned, who was working with, at the time, then Assembly member Shirley Weber to introduce a bill to create a reparations task force. Shirley Weber, who's now California's first African-American Secretary of State, when she was in the Assembly, she shepherded this task force bill through the Assembly, the Senate, and then Newsom had a signing ceremony with those same organizers. Ice Cube was there. The same elected officials that betrayed Black Americans this past week was at that signing ceremony to create the task force. So I wanted to give you that background that this story really starts in 2020 when Gavin Newsom signed into law the legislation that created the task force that I was the chair of. The task force, we were 9 members. We worked from June 2021 to June 2023. So the task force in and of itself actually has been over for about a year now. And since the task force has been over, in terms of work product first, the task force produced an 1,100-page final report cataloging all the harms and atrocities that the state has committed against Black Americans. But we also, talked about the United States or the federal government's role and responsibility for reparations as well, understanding that California was the first state in the nation to do this work, and even beating the federal government in doing this work. As we know, H.R. 40, federal reparations bill, has languished in Congress for 30 years now. And so again, just giving you all that context, we released that report with over 100 policy recommendations. The task force, our only power, we were a legislative advisory body. So our power was to advise the state legislature on the types of reparations policies that they should turn into legislation, and that then Governor Newsom should turn into law. And so since the task force ended last year, you had particularly the California Legislative Black Caucus, so the Black members in the California state legislature, took up the mantle to turn some of the 115 final recommendations from the task force to reparations legislation. So this is where it gets sticky. So Senator Stephen Bradford, he introduced two reparations bill, one to create a California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, which is actually based on a recommendation that I wrote while I was on the task force, and a bill to create a reparations fund. He introduced those bills independently of the Black Caucus and before the Black Caucus. And so, essentially the Black Caucus, was offended by the fact that Bradford introduced these bills independently for whatever reason, at least initially. And so there were
why were they introduced independently? Why were they not done in conjunction with the body?
I think you can have Senator Bradford on, I think that would be great to continue this conversation, because It's a really conversation. I would love to help coordinate that. But Bradford, he had a very transformative experience on the task force. At the end of the task force, he mentioned that it was one of the most transformative experiences in his political career. And again, you would have to talk a bit about to him. But he mentioned that this happens all the time, right? Black caucus members, endorse certain bills together, no matter what policy it is. And then sometimes they, individually introduce bills, but Black caucus members still would support, those bills that are independently introduced. And so in all, I believe that Bradford introduced these bills because of the transformative experience that he had. I think he saw the writings on the wall. And the Black Caucus said this. In their reparation priority package, there were 14 bills, and many of them, while they were based on some of the recommendations of the task force, they were sort of weak fiscally or in terms of material benefit to descendants. For instance, where Senator Bradford introduced a bill to create a new state agency to provide direct services and to be essentially a watchdog to ensure that, Black Americans' rights, privileges, and immunities wouldn't be abridged. Some of the bills in the California Black Caucus's priority package, for one, was, having grocery stores notify certain cities when they close to address, this, the food apartheid and food swamps that our neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods, are part of. And again, that was a policy proposal in terms of food apartheid. In our final report. However, that kind of pales in comparison, so to speak, to, the bills that Bradford introduced. Another one, a bill that was in the caucus's priority package, was extending the Crown Act to, covering competitive sports to ensure that, Black folks can no longer get discriminated against for wearing their natural hair in competitive sports. Again, a great policy, endorse it because it, is derivative from the task force's work. But I think Bradford saw or sensed that, and the Black Caucus has said that they wanted to kind of start slow. They wanted to, instead of aiming high, they wanted to kind of like get some low-hanging fruit. So
what would constitute low-hanging fruit on an issue like this? What would be low-hanging fruit?
So the low hanging fruit would be some of the bills that I just mentioned. And this is based on
The reason I'm asking is I would think the Crown Act. I would think the Crown Act would be low hanging fruit. That's something that everybody could get behind. I would think the closing of stores would be. I mean, all the things you mentioned to me felt like the low hanging fruit.
Yes, and so the Black Caucus only wanted to introduce low hanging fruit type.
Oh, you're saying as opposed to the? I got you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So the Black Caucus only wanted to introduce low hanging fruit type bills in their initial reparations priority package, whereas Senator Stephen Bradford wanted to aim high due to the transformative experience that he had. And then also, this was his last year in office. He was terming out. He served the state legislature for 14 years, 12 to 14 years. And so that's why he took the initiative to introduce some of the most strongest recommendations in the task force report, which was to create a new state agency and a new fund.
See, and here's the thing. Here's my issue with the Crown Act and the stores and all of that stuff. I think we should invest in urban communities. Yep. I think we should invest in Black communities. I think we should make sure that Black people are safe, protected, that we create models of equity so that we can catch up, after hundreds of years of inequality and injustice. But I don't ever want to confuse that with reparations. Yeah. If I'm not getting a check, if we're not repairing the damage done with economic investment, I happen to believe reparations should be a check to all descendants of American slavery and some other stuff. I'm fine with public education. I'm fine with universities and colleges being free for Black descendants of slavery as well. Like I'm saying, give us all of that, but don't let the trimmings be there and not the bird itself. And so when I hear them say, we want to start low with low hanging fruit, that ain't reparations. Just say you ain't down for reparations.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, many of their policies that they put in their priority reparations package, some of them were, bills that they were already working on in prior legislative sessions. They just kind of renamed it and just packaged it in like, okay, this is reparations. So, that was the strategy that they chose to take, and Bradford chose another strategy. However, I want to mention, even though they were initially, upset, they got over, essentially, it seemed as if they got over them being upset because Bradford, successfully shepherded through the two bills to create a reparations fund and fund and an agency. First through the Senate, because he's a senator. So he, those two bills passed through the Senate with flying colors through all the committees. It got a majority votes on the Senate floor. And so the next step was to go to the Assembly. And so these two bills to create an agency and fund successfully went through the Assembly committee process, through appropriations, even through what's called the suspense file, which is notoriously where bills go to die, like bills that have certain costs attached to it. Many of those bills end up dying in the suspense file. But these two bills by Bradford miraculously survived the suspense file. And also the California Legislative Black Caucus members who betrayed Bradford and the Black American people literally, 2-3 days before the end of the legislative session, they all voted in favor of these bills in the various committees. And so these two bills, where most people are coming into this story, these two bills were on its final step before Gavin Newsom would have been presented with these bills to sign into law or veto. So the final step was a final vote on the Assembly floor. And what happened was at the very last minute, the COBC members told Bradford that they would no longer be introducing his bills on the Assembly floor.